The story you're about to hear is one I never thought I'd share. I lived through darkness most can't imagine. Lifting wasn't just about strength, it was survival. And from that pain, I created the Breaker Mission to help others break their chains and reclaim their freedom. This is my story. Before we begin, I want to let you know that today's episode includes discussion of childhood sexual abuse. If that's a sensitive topic for you, please take a moment to prepare yourself or step away if needed.
On today's episode of SoulFIT TV, we share Micah's story and the freedom, restoration, and purpose that came through Christ.
If today's story is speaking to you, know this: there is hope, there is healing, and in Jesus, there is freedom.
We have such a special episode today, and Micah, I know this is just your story, and we've shared this story on different platforms, and we've already seen the power of when you share this testimony of the chains that really can be broken off of people. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to be vulnerable and to share. And thank you guys for watching. And I know this is going to be a really powerful episode for you.
Let's take it back to the very beginning. And so I was raised by a mother. It was just her and I. And as a little boy, the one thing I wanted more than anything was a dad. My dad and I have a great relationship now. But when I was little and you don't understand the complexity of relationships not working out, I just knew that I didn't have a dad in the home. And so that was something that I think I truly wanted. I was a kid with a lot of energy. I loved sports. I was very active. I was a very joyful child. But I also was very aware that the father wasn't there. So around that age, my mom was introduced to a man, and he had a family at that time, his wife, and he was a man of God. He was a man that was well trusted. He was a deacon in the church. He was someone that I would soon come to love and trust, as well as my mother did as well. And he came in and he started playing that father role in my life, and was that mentor. He'd come and pick me up. We would go to the park. We would fly kites. We would go fishing. He was the man that taught me about Jesus. That's when I came to Christ at such an early age. But little did I know at the time, he was also the man that started manipulating and grooming. And that's when it started around that age. Fast forward just a couple of years, around the age of 11, he sexually abused me, and he used the Lord's name in vain to do it. The manipulation, now looking back at it as a grown man, looking back at what he did, and I was just such an innocent little child. And it hurt. I mean, I can't even fathom hurting a child like that. And it literally almost destroyed me. It almost killed me. And so for the next 4 years, I went through pretty severe sexual abuse from him. And I was just really confused. I was confused because he's teaching me about the Lord at that time, and then at the same time doing his worst to me. And I just remember crying out to the Lord around the age of 15. He had done some bad stuff, and I just remember he left the room, and I was like, Lord, like, please protect me. Just please protect me. And the abuse kept happening. And I remember that's kind of where my relationship with the Lord, I had kind of pulled away. And I was like, I at that time, I was kind of taught that, like, if I was a good boy, like, God would take care of me and protect me and whatnot. And I didn't have a true relationship with Christ like I do now, and understand that. And so I looked at God as just being a protector if I was a good kid, and he was my father and whatnot. And and he didn't protect me. And I remember turning my eyes and my heart away from the Lord at that point. And my life, in all honesty, just, it went from worse to way worse. And so when the abuse stopped around the age of 15, I, um, I came home, and when you hold in that trauma and that pain for a period of time, because this had been many years that had happening, and I just remember, like, when you go through something as horrific as that, you convince yourself, no one can ever know this, no one will ever find out about this. The shame started gripping me, the thought of judgment, and I would always just be the abused kid. I would never have a girlfriend. I would be made fun of. I'm confused because of, like, the Lord and, like, what is going on here. So there was a lot of challenges, I think, through all of that. And I just recall getting to a place where I remember looking one day in the mirror, and I just didn't even recognize myself. And what had happened is that trauma that was pitted in so long inside of me that I had locked in a safe and threw the key away and said, I'm never going to share this with anyone. It started manifesting, and it eventually does. And it manifested in the form of anxiety, panic attacks, depression. That then leads to things like suicidal thoughts and extreme darkness that is so consuming. You start thinking in a way, and I felt literally like I was constantly drowning, and I'd barely get just enough air. And then I would just, and again, I'm not walking real tight at this point because I'd kind of turned my eyes and heart away, but I kept hearing the Lord from time to time just say, just keep going forward. Just keep going forward. I have something for you. And I would hear him, but I'd be frustrated too. I'm like, you're not there. Why weren't you there for me? And I had a lot of anger towards the Lord because I didn't feel like he really protected me. And so that anxiety came out in ways where no one around me would ever know. But I couldn't go to school anymore. I couldn't play sports anymore. I had to have full control of my environments. So I couldn't be on a bus, because I had no control. If I was driving, I would have to be driving. If I went to a movie theater, I'd have to be on the end of an aisle. There were so many things there. I couldn't even go to school anymore. I ended up having to go to a hospital and do school there. And I'll tell you, along the way, God gave me multiple lifelines. At the age of 17, he gave me the lifeline in the form of a family. And this family came in and took me in at the hardest part of my life. And they saved my life. They really, truly saved my life. And I love that family so much. Bill and Patty and the whole entire family, I love them so much. It's where I get choked up the most, in all honesty, because they didn't know what they were doing at the time, but it saved my life. And I needed it. And then I ended up following Bill to college. And from there, God gave me the second lifeline in the form of chicken and dumbbells. And chicken and dumbbells would become bodybuilding and that lifestyle. And at the time, I was using, that lifestyle really as a form of I wanted to get bigger muscles. And the deeper looking at it now, the deeper purpose in that was, if I get big enough muscles, no one will ever hurt me again. And so it was almost my coat of armor. And God is going, my coat of armor is much stronger than any muscle that you can grow. But I didn't realize that till later in life. And then the third lifeline would come in you. And that lifeline that God gave me in you, and that, my wife and the woman that, when I went through my own healing, would be the person that would help me get through that. And so I could be vulnerable and open up and do the healing that was necessary to then be in the place. And I get so emotional now because I just think about how many men and women are out there that are still suffering, and children that are being hurt. And I'm being called to it in a way that is so powerful. And I get emotional now because God has just planted in me this fire of going, you know what? You're stepping into this. You're going to be a voice in this, a strong masculine voice. You're going to share your story, and it's going to help other people. And I just need you to be obedient in this. And I took 7 full years of healing. True healing after the vision that he gave me at a Carrie Job concert of stepping on stage and sharing my story. And I was like, no, Lord, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he's like, I brought you this far. I've been on covers of magazines. I was a world champion. I had achieved all these things. I had a great wife, but inside I was still struggling. I was still hurting. That shame was still gripping me. And ultimately, he brought me into that season, and I would just sit down. I would sit down at 3 o'clock in the morning, which sounds crazy to a lot of people, but that's where I hear the Lord and I don't have distractions. So I wake up very early. I do my cardio, do all my stuff, but the first thing I do is get with the Lord. And he called me into that, and I needed to sit down, and I needed to write down every piece of my hurt and my pain. I needed to go through every piece of my forgiveness, anything that I felt guilty for too, any of the pieces that had severed my relationship, not only with my own shame and pain, but also the relationship I had with the Lord, because from 15 to really around the age of 30, I was not walking properly at all. I would hear him, but I wasn't walking properly. And it was so incredibly important that if I was going to be the man I needed to be for my wife, to be able to cover her, the leader I needed to be within my work and with hitchfit and SoulFIT and whatnot, I had to get my heart and my eyes aligned back to him. That's why you were so incredibly important. Because the husband is there to cover, but the wife is equally as important in those seasons of just going, we need to stay tight. The Lord, you need to be able to cover me. You need to be able to strengthen me. We need to be able to pray together. We need to do all of those things. And that gave me that accountability to then build that relationship with him. We've had a great pastor over those years, and Pastor Porter and Jason Porter, and friendships and real discipleship has happened over those periods of years. And now we get to step into this season, be able to share these pain to purpose stories and really help get that shame, that grief, that anger, that pain, whatever it is that someone is holding, help them get to the other side of that through the love and the freedom of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's powerful. Thank you for sharing. I would love for you to just share a little bit more about the depths of the shame that is specifically for men. It's one thing that we've learned on this journey is just the bondage that men are in because of this type of shame is it's so gripping. And we know some statistics now as we've kind of gone on this breaker mission journey of how many men specifically never share when something like this has happened to them, whether it's a one-time occurrence or something that happened over a long period of time, whether it was by a man in their life or whether it was by a woman in their lives, because we also know that this type of abuse is happening nearly, not quite equally, but fairly equally as far as male and female abusers, which people don't realize too. So could you just speak for a minute about the depth of that shame?
The shame is so gripping. I think it's the number one thing the devil does to grip men in never sharing. Because, there's a societal side of shame that, a man just like, boys don't cry. Vulnerability is weakness. Silence is strength. Just run through the wall. You're tough enough to get through all this stuff. The reality of the situation is this isn't like getting into a fight. Like this is true demonic warfare that is going on inside the body in a way that shame just grips and just destroys you. And so what ends up happening, we talked about manifestation of things happening through trauma, but a lot of guys are turning to drugs or alcohol, pornography, food, broken relationships. You can't be the father you need to be. You can't be the husband you need to be. All of those things. It's totally destructive. And it could have been one situation that happened when you were 7 years old. But for whatever reason, the devil comes in and places that imagine what people will think of you.
Yeah.
Never share this. And over time, it just gets bigger and bigger and snowballs into this piece that it destroys you. And you talked about statistics, and I want to talk about this and why it's so heartbreaking to me. 1 in 6 men, they say, have gone through something similar as me. I think it's actually wrong. I think it's closer to 1 in 4. This is my opinion. But I say this because 90 to 93% of men that have gone through it have never shared a word with anyone. The ones that do, it takes 21 years on average and 28 years to actually go into depth with it. So think about that. When you're walking around at a grocery store, you're at the gym, wherever it is that you are, and you're counting men, you're going, man, he went through it too. He went through it too. We're at church, we're looking around, 1 in 4, 25% of men, yet 90+% have never said a word, and it's destroying them.
Yeah, it's really such a big big issue, and something that we need to just be open and talk about. And that really is the heart of the Breaker mission, is being able to have these conversations, being able to lean into these hard things. For your story, it was the sexual abuse, and there was a spiritual abuse, and that's kind of what we dig into with the Breaker, with your book that's out now and available on Amazon, where we walk through your story, but we also walk through that healing journey that the Lord took you on. And there's so much more to this story. There's so much healing that needs to happen. There's so much that conversations that need to be had around this. But I'm very proud of you for stepping up and committing and saying yes to the Lord, and being willing to be that strong masculine voice in a space that it is so desperately, desperately needed. So I thank you. I believe that so many chains are going to be broken from men who are trapped in this as a result of your courage to step into this and to say yes.
Yeah. This has been the most challenging that I've ever had to go through in my life. But also, I just want to say to the men out there that there is freedom, there is hope on the other side of this. Then you get the opportunity to speak into other people and be in a position to help others as well.
Welcome to HitchFit in 5. So today we're going to talk about what is one of your lifelines for your healing journey. And we kind of say it in a funny way of chicken and dumbbells is what the Lord led you to, that ended up being so transformational and really helping you move through that trauma.
Bringing myself back to that 18-year-old teenager, I was really struggling and no one knew. The shame, the pain that I was carrying, massive anxiety and depression. And God really gave me this lifeline in chicken and dumbbells. And what I didn't know at the time, I went into the gym wanting to build more muscle and look like the guys on the covers of magazines and whatnot. But what God knew that was much greater than those things was that every repetition I was doing with a dumbbell, every repetition, He had built literally a pharmacy in each of our muscles, that every time you contract that muscle, it was releasing what is called myokine. Scientists call it hope molecules that are going through the bloodstream past the brain barrier and helping with things and combat things like anxiety and depression. The things that I was struggling with most, God gave me a lifeline in those two things. And I just remember at the time, it gets me emotional thinking about going back to that place and not knowing what was going on with me or how to control that. But every repetition I was doing, I was feeling better and better and better. And now with all the research we know and the studies we know, God knew what He was doing. He knew what He was doing. And, the research shows that working out is 1.5 times more effective for combating things like anxiety and depression than any medication and even counseling. Not that we're against counseling or medication for periods of time, but think about this, a lifeline that you can use every single day to keep yourself balanced.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because you shared, you were experiencing panic attacks. And when you started going to the gym and making this a part of your lifestyle without even realizing that, those things really subsided for you. So it really is fascinating how effective strength training specifically is for the mental health. So we talk so often about how we of course want strong bodies, we want strong bones, we want strong muscles, but what people don't understand a lot of times is the impact that the strength training and being in here in the gym has on that mental health.
Yeah, this has been a place in fitness world, we call it iron therapy. There's a lot of men that if you've gone through something similar as me, in that level of abuse, you carry a lot of shame. And the thought of even opening up about that is a scary thing to do. So I don't want to go to traditional counseling. And again, I encourage you, when you're ready to take that step for healing, you need to find a community or someone that you love, that you can trust, that you can open up, because that's a big part of healing. But maybe you're not ready for that. And you need to get to a level where you're just balanced and you're breathing in some sort of way. And the gym is that place. So if you're like, oh man, I don't like to work out, I don't have time for that, make time for it. It is not non-negotiable when it comes to anxiety and depression.
Yeah, because what it can do, it can help with those hormone levels. It can help with just your body being able to process that trauma through. It impacts sleep. Sometimes being able to get good sleep is very challenging for people. So there's all of these things. And a lot of times people are like, I don't know where to start. And it's, you start with what you can and you kind of just are able to build from there. But it's not just, this was something you started with and then continued on with for the rest of your life. And like you said, we know how impactful it is, and it's not that, medication and therapy may be a part of your journey, and those may be tools you use, but this really, I'll use the word should here, it really should be, anybody who's gone through these things, this should be a part of that healing journey, because we know it's how God designed our bodies. It's actually so remarkable of how he created movement to be such a part of potential healing for us.
Yeah, and one other really big thing is how quickly it happens.
Yeah.
Where you start
Yes.
feeling quick, like within a week, 2 weeks, you start cleaning up the nutrition, start working out, and you're like, I feel like a completely new man.
Yep.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah. So if you're not sure where to start, that's what we have the HitchFit app for. So if you're like, I see that this is such a great tool, but I have no idea what to do, we would love to invite you to be a part of that community with us, learn how to work out and learn nutrition, which has such an impact on the brain and the healing journey too.
For the men out there, I just want you to know I'm praying for you. There is hope. There is freedom. Jesus Christ, dumbbells, chicken breast, community, and love. Hi, so you guys heard a little bit of my story, and I would love to hear now your perspective and your side of the story.
Well, one interesting thing about your story, and that we know is very rare now, is you actually shared with me about your sexual abuse at the hands of a man from your church. You shared that information with me within 24 hours of us meeting. And we didn't know it then, but we now know how extremely rare that is for you to have felt that level of safety that quickly. And we were at a fitness event in Las Vegas and had just met, and we really kind of knew that we were each other's person, and we went very deep with conversation. You had shared with me that you were angry at God, and I asked you a question about that later, and I just asked you, why are you angry at God? And that's when you shared with me. And I remember in that moment just feeling like the gravity and the weight of that. I remember feeling deep sadness for what you had gone through, and I understood, even though I didn't even have trauma education like I do now, I understood that it was a story to be held. And there's things that I did right in that moment that can be helpful for wives, for sisters, for mothers who maybe think their husband or their son or their cousin or their brother has gone through something and they're not really sure what to do. I've actually, since you sharing your story, I've had a lot of women reaching out to me wanting to know, how do I help this man that I love in my life? And so what I did well in that moment was I held the story. I listened. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't offer solutions to you. I remember just holding the story with you and saying, thank you for sharing. So for those out there who are wondering what to do in that moment, if someone, especially if a man shares with you for the first time, just say, thank you for sharing, and hold the story, and don't try to fix it in that moment.
Yeah, you're going to want to fix it. And it's also incredibly important that if a man, your son, whoever that may be, ends up sharing with you, that the way you respond is true. This is the hardest, most difficult thing for him to say. And he's come to you because he trusts you and he loves you. And so responding, again, like you just said, it's not about fixing.
Yeah.
You're going to want to do that as a mother or as a father. Like, you're going to want to fix it. It's not fixing. It's just holding that. And then after they open up, I would encourage you, just say, you're incredibly strong.
Yeah. And really being able to create safety. And I also want to just point out that this is very nuanced, that there are many different situations, because as we know, men who have these wounds that are untended, there may be emotional abuse happening. There may be abusive situations happening. So it can be, this is so nuanced as far as how to handle each and every situation. So I just want to speak to that I understand every single situation is different, but I also know that there is hope, and I know that Jesus can come in, and I know that he can heal, and he can turn any situation around.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I am living proof of that.
Yes.
You know, in the darkest of times, I didn't think that it would potentially happen. And Jesus was like, yeah, it can. Through me, anything's possible. So explain to us the Breaker mission and how that actually became.
Yeah, so this is very important. So when we knew we were sharing this story, the Lord let me know that I was the one that was to write your book and to be able to share it from your voice and your perspective. So we literally, writing this book, The Breaker, we sat on the living room floor, and I would say, take me to a moment, and then we crafted each chapter out and crafted the story out, and it's a story of hope, and I think that's what's really important for people to know. Yes, there's the grief and there's the harm, but this is a story about hope and about freedom that is possible. And we've seen so often people get to this point of pain tolerance and pain management with some of the tools that the world has to offer. But with Jesus, there's actual freedom. And that's why the book is called The Breaker. And so when we were figuring out the title of this book, the Lord led me in my devotions one morning to Micah 2:13, which says, "The breaker who breaks open the way will go up before them. They will break through the gate and go out. Their king will pass through before them, the Lord at their head." And when I read that verse, I didn't even realize it was in the book of Micah initially, but when I read it, I was like, that is the name of our book. That is the name of our mission. It is the Breaker mission, because Jesus is the breaker. Micah 2:13 is the only verse in the entire Bible that Jesus, the Messiah, is referred to as the breaker. So when we are saying the Breaker mission, we are literally saying the Jesus mission, because he is the way. He is the one who breaks through those chains of shame, and he's the one that leads us into freedom, and that is hope. That is hope for anybody that has gone through what you've gone through or any other type of abuse or harm.
So for the fellas out there, for the ladies out there that are seeking, they're like, what do I do? Where do I go? We have resources at SoulFIT TV.com. The Breaker is on there as well for resources. If you're ready to commit and you're ready to really just go into, you're like, I can't hold this anymore. I need to let this go. And I just encourage you to understand that there is hope. There is hope to get to pain tolerance, which is living, but then there's true freedom, and that true freedom is in Jesus Christ. But we have resources wherever you are in your walk right now.
Yeah, so you can go to SoulFIT TV. You can get your copy of the Breaker book so that you can read it there. You can check out those resources. There is hope for you. We will help you find a safety if you need to share your story for the first time. But we thank you for joining us for this episode, and we will see you next time on SoulFIT TV.
Everything we talk about on SoulFIT TV, you can find at our Shop the Show website. Scan the QR code or head to SoulFITTV.com.
You'll find our upcoming retreats, the HitchFit app, supplements, apparel, books, resources from our guests, and more, all in one place. You can also connect with us directly through our social media, message us, and let us know what you think about the show.
Your support helps us continue producing SoulFIT TV and spreading this message.
Visit SoulFITTV.com and shop the show today.